Hello everyone, it's Chris Bachman, and I'm a faculty member at Cal State Late. I'm putting together this short video for students in Introduction to Mechanical Design, showing them how to make all of the parts and assemble these parts for this flashlight. So if you want to check out some of our other videos on making parts in Solidworks, they'll go through a little bit more of the Solidworks interface. But here I'm just going to quickly run through making this assembly. So I'm going to go through making the handle, the head, and the window, and assembling them all together. So you should have these drawings up so that you can reference all of these dimensions as you're making them. So let's get started. So we'll first start by turning on SolidWorks and opening up a new part. Just a second. All right, so when you first start, you want to make sure that you're in inches. So down here, there's an option for that. You want to permanently change this. You can come in here and change things here. You can change these numbers, as well as maybe you want to, more common in the US is to go with the ANSI standard. And once you save these, you can save this as, you can save it as a part template. So it should be somewhere in here, part template, and save it in the right spot, and it'll always start like this. So let's get going. So begin by sketching on the top plane. And so right now I'm making the handle. So I'll come in and I'm going to start just by making the circular part of the bottom and then extruding it out. So I'm going to build ours up section by section. So I'm going to make a circle and I click at the center so that it adds this green icon so that it constrains it to this point. And I don't bother putting in the dimension here. I come straight to Smart Dimension. This will fully define it, both the center and now the diameter. So this is going to be 1 inch. So come out Smart Dimension. F is a quick command to zoom in. Again, the scroll wheel zooms in and out. Holding the scroll down allows you to rotate it. Holding Control and pushing down the scroll wheel allows you to pan it. If you need to look at it straight on again, you can always right click and hit normal too, and it'll zoom right in on it. So I'm actually going to pull the drawing in right next to this, and that way we can see exactly what I'm doing. So right now that we've sketched something in 2D, we can extrude it out into 3D. So extrude, these are all adding material. So if you want to remove material, you're going to do it in a different way. You're going to use the cuts. And keep in mind, there's a number of different ways that we can put this flashlight handle together, but I'm just going to kind of do it in an additive way. And so I'm going to go from 2 down to this 1.65. So I can 2 minus 1.65. I can, or sorry, 0.65. Right? And so, and I can just use the math, and that way I don't need to try and do it anywhere else. So next, I'm going to come up and I'm actually just going to extrude this part that's 0.7, and I'm going to extrude it up 0.3, so 0.6 from 0.65 to 0.35. So again, I'm just going to come and I'm going to sketch on this surface. And the reason you want to sketch on the surface and maybe not at the base and then extrude up is if you change this length, you probably want the top to stay the same. So when you start to make more complicated things, you start want to think about making your part so that when you make changes, it'll change in the way that you want and it won't require more work than you need. So this is going to be a diameter of 0.7. And it's going to go up 0.3, like I said. So I'm going to exit the sketch. And so if I have it selected, when I hit extrude, it's already going to know. And I'm going to do it from the sketch plane and blind, so just a certain distance, 0.3. Check. So we have that part. Next, I'm going to extrude the last part. So again, I'm just going to sketch on the top, and I'm going to extrude this part for the thread. So I'm going to do a 9/16 diameter here. One more circle. And smart dimension. Nine divided by 16. Exit the sketch. And then we're going to extrude this. This is going to go 0.35. That looks good. So the last part I want to do is there's this hole for the battery down the middle. So we can do similar thing, sketch on the top again. You can see the similar processes that we're using. And then I'm just going to dimension this hole. 0.41. And I'm going to extrude it down, right? But this time I need to cut it. So I need to cut it 1.63. So 1.63 down. Good, now we have the hole. So the last couple of things you can tell we're missing is this chamfer, this fillet, and this thread. So let's start with the chamfer and the fillet. So the fillet, we can use the 3D fillet tool. There's also fillet tools when you're doing a sketch. And we'll click here. And you can turn on the different previews so you can see it, and it's going to give us that nice fillet. Underneath the fillet, there's also the chamfer. This chamfer is going to come down into this edge right here. And what we need it to do is we need it to be 0.15, 0.15. And that'll give us that transition that we need. Right, so we have our transition, and then we need the thread. So underneath the whole wizard, there's the thread. So this is okay that it's, not exactly how you want it to be. So you just want to find this one, this -18. This actually isn't the right outer diameter, but luckily we already made the outer diameter, and this is the right thread. And we want to cut the thread. So this option is telling it where do we want to start. And so I would start at this bottom part down here. Right, and just make sure it goes all the way up. We have our thread. And so make sure you save it. If this is probably going to take you longer than it takes me. So what you'll want to do is make sure you're saving along the way. So this is going to be my flashlight. And you want to keep all your files together because in the assembly, they're going to go back and reference them. So this is going to be, and you want to give these descriptive names. So this is the handle, right? And so, because when you put them in the assembly, see, that's fine, you can rebuild. In the assembly, you're going to need to reference those. All right, next, new part. So if you go to the novice, that's what it looked like before. If you go to advanced, here I can open up my part template that I have, where I've changed the number of decimals that I see and put it in ANSI. So next, we're going to build this head. So this one, I'm going to do more of a subtractive process. So I'm going to start with the whole block and then remove things away. So again, I'm going to sketch on the top plane. Sketching on the top side, front or right, we'll just change what is defined as those planes. So it's really your call. And again, I always like to start with one point and see that little constraint is yellow. So that means it's actually going to make a constraint. And then I'll just come in and I'll dimension these. It's also nice because now you're going to have your base planes of your part right on the edges of them. You might also want it to put, since this kind of holds down the middle, you could have also tried to put the center here, but either way will work. And then I'm going to extrude this up. So it's 1 inch, and this P means typical. So it's the other features are like that. So it's 1 inch tall, 1 inch wide, and it's 1.5 tall. Have the sketch selected, come to the features and extrude it. All right, so 1.5. Doesn't fit in my screen, so I hit F. Okay, so next I'm going to start removing some of the material. So I'm going to do the hole all the way through. Then I'm going to do these 2 holes on the bottom. So I'm going to sketch on the top surface, and I'm going to come in here and do a circle. And this circle, I need to define where it is from both edges. So it's halfway in, 0.5, 0.5, and then we know that this center hole is going to be 0.38. And we're going to extrude cut this all the way down through in features. And we could say blind, or we could just say through all. That way, if we change the length, it'll always go through. So that is a more robust way to set it up. Okay, next we're going to go to the bottom side. And we have this 3/4 inch hole to put in here. So we're going to sketch on here. And the nice part is if you highlight over this circle, it'll bring up the center of the circle, which you can then constrain to. And we can smart dimension this to 0.75. Exit the sketch. And then what we're going to do from here is we're going to extrude cut. And this one is going to be 0.16 deep, 0.16. And then we next have this spot for the 9/16 hole where the handle will screw up into. So that's going to be 0.7 deep from this surface. So let's just draw it from that surface. We can again sketch on this surface. We can again go over one of these so that it gives us the center. Okay. Oh, so here's a good example. I exited the sketch too early. I didn't dimension that right. So I left click on it. And if it tries to open that, click right on the icon. You can go to edit sketch. You can smart dimension this to 9/16. All right, so it can do the math for you. I need to put that in your calculator. And I'll do the features, and I'll do the extrude cut. Right? Oh, I didn't select which one I want. So you could either try and select this line, right? Or you could actually come down in here and select the sketch, right? So I usually just like to have the sketch selected, and then I do an extrude cut. And this one's going to be 0.70. Okay, like we did before, we're going to put some thread in this spot. Same type of thread. This time we're just going to have to add the thread on because we started with 9/16. And so we're going to have to extrude the thread onto it. And we should actually start from this other edge down the inside, and that way it's easy just to know how far it should go. Right? We could say like up to selection, but I'm actually going to actually go a little long so that it doesn't end. You can always rotate it, make sure it goes far enough. We want to extrude the thread, so we need to add the thread because the outside is 9/16, so we need to add it back in. Here, we got that thread. Looks good. Oh, but because of the extrude cut, actually, I should actually do as I said I shouldn't do. When you're cutting it, you can just go extra, but here we don't want to go extra. We're going to have to go right up to a selection. We'll just like go up to here. Oh. There we go. So it went a little bit wrong. So it didn't quite recognize the selection right. So you can come in here and fix that and just make it a little bit. I have to put in a manual little offset here. So if it looks like it almost looks like it's 2 threads out. So if you have 18 threads per inch, then each each thread is 1/18 of an inch. So I think we have 2 threads. We could get rid of 2. Offset it the other direction. Let's see, is it 2 or is it 1? Looks like I got a little more to do. Those 4 threads. If you want to see it better, we could make the part, this part transparent. You know, it'll let us right now make it transparent. We might have to get out of here. But oh, it didn't do my offset. This was 1 divided by 9, I believe. Okay, it wasn't. Maybe it was 1 divided by. Maybe it was just 1 thread too long. Yeah, it was just 1 thread too long. There we go. Got it right there. So as I was saying, if you want to make this thing transparent, you can come up and do top level transparency, or if you just want to come in here, you could make the whole thing clear, but let's just change top level. Well, actually, I'm not. Well, let's just see what it looks like. So now you could see like what was inside of it. So let's undo that. So next I want to make sure I'm viewing this in the right planes. So we're going to now put this recess around the top. And so what we can do here is we can sketch on this face, and we can do a center rectangle. And we can define the center, trying to find the center of this here, and then make both sides 0.9. So one fast way to do this, if you always know, like for example, this thing's going to be a square, is it's actually better to dimension these so that they're equal, so that you'd only have to change 1. So we could say equal to this, and hit enter, and then it's in. So that's a nice way to do it. And we could either fillet those in this sketch, or we could add the fillets in afterwards. Last time we did the fillets afterwards. So the fillets can either remove material or add it, same with the chamfer as you saw. But let's try now in sketch, there's also this fillet tool. So these radii are 0.19. That's what you'd get roughly for a 3/8 end mill. And you can just click on the corners. You could also click on both lines if you want, but clicking on the corners is what I like to do. It's a little bit quicker. Check, exit, and we know it's going to be 0.05, so 50,000 steep. So this is an example where I like to select the sketch. So let's see what happens if we don't. So if we don't select the sketch and then we hit the extrude cut, then we're going to try and select this. All right, it was able to figure out the sketch contour, but sometimes it'll have issues kind of finding it. So, and if you have issues, just go back out and have your sketch selected. So there's the 50 thou sitting there. Right. So we're starting to come along. Next step we want to do is put the 2 holes in. So for these kind of internal threads, it's easy just to use the hole wizard. And they're number 1032. So number 10 signifies the major diameter of the thread. So it's numbered all the way until it gets bigger up to a 1/4 of an inch, and then 1/4 of an inch, then it's fractions of an inch. So you'll have, you know, 1/4, 5/16, 3/8, 7/16, 1/2 inch bolts, and then you'll usually have these in increments of, you know, 12, 10, 8. It's the smaller size, and then 32 is the number of threads per inch. And there's usually a fine thread and a coarse thread. But so what we want here is on the left-hand middle, a straight tap, which we have this 1032. We want this to go down 0.5 inches. This will typically have an automatic value, knowing you can't get the thread all the way in. Right, you scroll down. I usually use with thread callout, and then I don't want to have a near side countersink, so make sure that's off. So now we told it everything we wanted about this hole, and you could give it like, you know, you see this hole with a counter bore or just a straight hole. So there's a lot of different types of holes you can use, but left, middle. And then we want to tell it the position. So what I'm going to do is you're going to select the face. And so these ones are actually a half inch down from the top. So I'll select the top face. And then you just want to select roughly where they go. And that'll give you the center that you can then smart dimension. And this one says it's 0.24 from both edges. 0.24. Right, and then I also need from here, 0.24. And I could just say this is equal to this one. That way, in the future, if I want to make a change, I can just do that. Okay, so I'm done smart dimensioning it. I'm done with the position of my hole. I can hit check. And we'll have our hole right here. If it doesn't show the thread inside the settings, which I might have to make it a little bit bigger, but I think it's under editor file. It's actually down here. Options. It's usually up here if you have a wider tool. So I always get to it from up here. But if you go into, I believe, systems. So this is stuff for systems. This is stuff for just your document. If you go into detailing, you can show the shaded cosmetic thread if you want. All right, so I want to show you another thing that you can use here, and that's you can pattern not only sketches. So in the sketch, there's going to be pattern, or mirroring, but you can actually pattern this. And so what we can do is actually we can even do a circular pattern, and we can tell it what do you want a circular pattern. So I'll come down in here, and I want to select this whole feature, and I want to pattern this, right? And I'm going to pattern this thing about this circle, and I want two of them. And I want them 180 degrees apart. And so if I change this one, it's just naturally going to change that one. So that's nice. And then I need one more hole just down here on the side. So sometimes you'll notice that you have these like lines will stay up. Let's see if I can get rid of these. So I think if you right click this and make this invisible, it'll send those away. So that's nice. Well, you can tell it kind of messes some with my shaded cosmetic thing, but I would actually prefer that than having those lines always stay there. So we'll come here and we'll do the hole wizard. And again, we have the 1032, half inch deep will be fine. It'll go halfway through. And then the position, we want it on this face, right? Can tell like, so that will be halfway along the line. And now it's going to be vertical from that point, but because it's white, you can tell it's not going to actually add that constraint. We're still going to have to dimension it here, but it's going to give us exactly the one we want. And then it's supposed to be 0.69 from the top. So check, put that one in. That looks good. Again, you notice if I turn this, it leaves that sketch there. So you have to come and make that invisible, which unfortunately will remove some of your cosmetic thread, but I'd prefer it to look like that. So it looks good now. So that's our flashlight head. All right, so we have the window to put in, the screws will hold that in, set screw comes in and holds the bulb. There's an O-ring that sits on this lip to add some friction between the two and to keep them from being loose as you have the battery that sits in this handle comes in contact up and down to turn the flashlight on and off. But let's save that and let's go onto the window. So this is the head. Apart. So again, we could make this window in a number of different ways. We could make the outside and then cut everything away, but I'm just going to make it and extrude it right off the bat. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to sketch on the top plane. Like I did before, I'm just going to start in the bottom left. So I'll do this corner. Up. So these are 0.88 by 0.88. Right. And I'm just making them the basic size, or some people would call it the nominal size in the drawing, and ignoring the tolerances, which have more to do with the what size they'd be when you'd actually make them in order for them to work, and but also, you know, to not require too much precision that would be overly expensive or time consuming. So these radii are 0.19, just like the inside of the recess that they sit in. So I'm done with that. And then I'll zoom in. The next thing I will do is I'll just, and I don't want to draw them near here because it'll force them on those points. So I'll smart dimension this to 0.2. You can say 2 times 0.2, so it means both of those features. 0.2. And then we're going to dimension these from the sides as 0.18. 0.18. And here, as soon as you want to zoom in, make sure you're actually clicking the center of the circle. So that's there, that's the center, and the side. That other point is part of this arrow, so you don't want to like dimension the arrow, right? And then we have this another one that'll be up here. We'll make a circle. And what we could do is we could even mirror it, right? So we could make a center line across these 2 points, right? And then what we could do is we could mirror the entities to mirror. We don't want to mirror this line. We want to mirror this. We want to mirror it about this, right? So it'll flip it over there. So we get our 2 points. So there's some different features you can use. We're going to exit it. And this one you'll notice if we don't have the sketch selected, we come over here and just do extrude it. And notice we don't have any material yet, so we can't cut it. If we select this, it's not gonna be able to recognize the holes. It's just going to make it solid, right? So what we'll need to do, so we could come in here and delete what we have, and then select in here. Could try and select all of it, but you can tell if you select here, it's going to know the region. Or what we could have done is just selected the sketch beforehand. And this is 16th inch acrylic that we use. Oh, 16th. Not 5/8. There we go. Looks good. Right, and we can, this material, if you want to specify the material, this one's clear, so it looks, you know, the other ones where we can right click and do edit material. The other ones are aluminum, so this gray wasn't, you know, too poorly represented. But we go to plastics, third one down's the acrylic, and apply those material properties and let it look a little clear. So we'll save this. This will be our window. Let's save. Okay, next we have to make the assembly. So new assembly file. That's the first time you want to make sure you're going to also be in inches, because you're going to be dimensioning how close together things are. All right, so because I'm already in this area, that'll give us these 3. So if I hold them all down, it'll let me bring them over. The first thing I put in, it'll fix in space. The next thing will allow to float, and the next thing will be allowed to float. All right, and so right now this is just sitting in space. And it's putting it relative to the three planes, which is nice. All right, so this is sitting right close to these 3 planes, and so it's 3 planes, which we can also mate with these 3 planes. But so the whole idea here is, how do these things go together? And that's what we use with mating. So I'm going to start with mating this part to this part. So what we can do is you could just mate the 3 different faces. So like, for example, I could mate, you know, I know this thing's going to need to rotate a little bit so that it sits into there. I could mate this face, and I just know hey, I want those two things to touch. So it's pretty intuitive that touching is coincident, right? If it was parallel, then they just have to stay parallel or perpendicular, right? So, and I know that it's not going to be quite centered if I do that, so I need to add a little offset. So like a 0.01 inch offset, right? And that looks about right. So you can see, we rotate this, this thing is going to be stuck there, but it can move up and down, or it can move left and right relative to this, right? It looks a little bit better up here. It can move just left and right. So if you want to constrain both of those directions, sometimes it's nice to do a line actually. So I can say like this line, right? If you zoom in, and if it won't select this, if you hold shift, it'll bring it to the front. So we can say this line and this line, right? We want those two to go together, right? But some of the issues here now is we need to offset it. So it's not going to necessarily know which direction should the offset go in. So this is one weird case where if you didn't need to offset it, that would be a good way to do it. But because you need to offset it in that direction, hold shift again so I can get that face. Otherwise it knows it's clear, so it's going to look for what's behind it here. So because I need to offset it in just this direction, it wasn't letting me specify that before. I'm going to do this one, and then I'm going to mate the face down to tell it how tall I want it to be. Right? And so now you see this whole thing will kind of move together now. And if I look in, my holes look lined up. So this is a nice part of assembly. I can tell, you know, it looks like it cut a nice gap. Looks like there's some clearance for the screws to go in, and this can come down. So I'm not going to show all the parts. And you can see we have another video on our channel for how to find all of the parts. So I'm just going to quickly pull them in, but I'm going to at least do the O-ring, and I'm going to do the set screw and the two screws up here. So what you can do is you can come over here to the design library, and you can come into your toolbox. This will usually come up even if you've used it. And then ANSI inch. And then first I'm going to bring in the bolts and screws. The bolts and screws. Then I'm going to come down and I'm going to look for the machine screws. And I'm just going to do these binding head screws. They're pretty similar to the hand cross screws. Just have a little bigger area to grab onto. Actually, let's yeah, we can do that. Actually, let's do the pane head. And so what we're going to do is we're just going to insert this into our assembly. The 1032 quarter inch is fine, right? So this looks good. So I'm just going to hit check. So it's going to bring in my screw, right? So if you hold control, you can actually change things about your screw, which you might not want to do. So oops. Bring that in one more time. Accidentally hit Z there. So right click, insert into assembly. Oh, sorry, I did pan cross. Insert into assembly. Check mark. And then what you can do is you can just hit here, copy, and then click paste, and it'll give you another one. Then we want the set screw, so we're just going to have to go up back to bolts and screws. Find the, we're going to want the set screws with a socket. So we don't want a slot because we want this Allen head or this hex key. And then we'll probably a cone point is good. And so we'll insert that in simply. So, oh, actually, let's do not a cone, but a cup. Cup is the more common one. I'll show you the end of it. Insert this into the assembly. 1032, 3/16 looks right for this part. I thought that looked weird all of a sudden. So you can tell the cone looks like this, where the ones that have this dimple inside look like this, where the cone will come all the way out. So these are actually more common, which you'll find. And so now we just need to start putting all this together. Oh, one more thing, we need our O-ring. So we can get out of the bolts and screws. And we can just come up an Nancy inch, O-rings, all O-rings. And then right here, we're going to create the part. Ours is a dash 15. So our dash 15 is this 0.551. So we'll pull that one in. Whoops, didn't quite come in. Insert into assembly. Maybe I might have accidentally hit configure. Dash 15, hit check. Oh, hopefully I didn't just insert 2 of them in now. It just took a little time. All right, so this is one of the harder ones to get on there. So let's start with these screws. These screws, the first thing we know is, oh, they're going to be concentric with these holes. So I'm going to say, hey, I know this outer body, that round body, is going to be concentric with this hole because it's going to go down into there. And you can tell, like right now, it looks like it's the right way up. So I'll hit check. And the last thing I know is this part is going to screw down, and it's going to come onto the head. Or sorry, it's going to come onto the glass. And so it's not shooting the glass, so I have to hold shift and then get this top plane. Make sure it's on that top plane so it sits flush there. And hit check. So you'll notice if you chose the binding, it would just be a bigger, it's got a little bigger head. So do the same thing here. This outer barrel is going to be concentric with this circle. Does it look like it's the right way up and down? Yep. Right, check. Sometimes it goes into your part. You can make it clear to help you get it, or if you got a little piece of it, you can pull it out. And then the underside of this head is going to sit on this top surface. Right, so I hold shift, and that looks like the top surface. It comes right up into place. Right, so the last thing we're going to do is we're going to mate this. And so our set screw, is going to go in here and hold our light bulb in place. So those two are going to be concentric, and you can see it's automatically understanding that it's concentric. And then we're going to check. You can tell it's kind of stuck in, a little bit stuck in here, so we can try and pull it out. There we go. And if you're trying to get something on the inside, what you can always do is you can come into this, this head. We'll get out of the mating. Come into this head, right click on it, and you can change the transparency. Then it's easier to see how it's going. Everything looks good so far. And I'm going to mate this, and I'm going to see if I can mate it to this. Problem is this has got this funky shape where it cut it out. So we're going to have to, let's hit mate. I'm not actually sure if it's actually going to quite grab onto that. So let's give it a shot. Here, I want this to be roughly here. So you can tell it's kind of confused by these two edges because this edge is not actually a circle. So never can give us any solid points here at all. Sometimes you can find some points around the edge, but the problem is this is the line. So what we'll have to do is we'll have to kind of manually do this. So instead of this edge, I'm just going to put this face flush with this face, and then we can just kind of offset it inside. Right, and that's obviously too far. That's a little bit too far. Something around there is where it'll sit and it'll touch the flashlight. So that seems about right. In the class, if you just want to leave it flush with the outside, that's fine. That way we can see it. All right, so the next step is trying to get this O-ring onto here because it'll sit between the two. So right now we have this piece with everything together and this over here. So if you see, there's only one surface on this O-ring. And so when we click on it and try and mate it onto like this surface, it's not going to give us anything that's useful. It's just floating around. So if we come back in here, if you ever need to change anything, you can drop down these mates and it'll highlight where they are, and you can left click and edit them. Or in this case, I'm going to right click and I'm going to delete it. What I need to do is merge this to these base planes. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to mate the planes associated with the O-ring instead of trying to mate any of the faces. So this can actually be a more robust way to do things. And you could do these with any of your parts. So for example, I want this top plane, and I want it to sit on this plane right here. And if I look to the side, That looks pretty good. And I'm going to offset it by the thickness, by half the thickness, so that it sits on top. So this is about a 16th, so that'll sit right on top. Next, you can tell I need to get the center with the center. So what I can do with the O-ring is I can take one of these other planes, maybe like this front plane, and with the, so obviously I can't do it quite with the base planes in my whole assembly, but this is, but with the, not the head, but the handle. And every time your computer is starting to get slow, this would be like telling me the time I should save it. You made those there. So that lined them up in this direction. Next, we just got to line it up in this last direction. Right? But let's save it. If you notice things are getting a little slow, SolidWorks can tend to crash because it uses a lot of resources. Whatever asks that, just build any of the parts. And we're going to call this flash light assembly. Okay. I'm going to go in and mate this last part. And again, we're going to drop this down so we can see our O-ring. Right? Here's our right plane. And we're going to go with our handle. And it might not be the right, but luckily it's the right here. So, but don't just do right to right and top to top. You got to double check to make sure that those look right. So that looks good. So we have our O-ring in place. Next, we just got to put the top down. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to get these concentric. So there's a lot of things that are circular on both, so we could use a lot of different things to do that. But let's just, I'm going to go to close to, this part is going to go inside of here. So I guess that's maybe the most intuitive part to me. And avoiding the threads just because they can be kind of complex. So I hit check. So now the head can go up and down. Now we just need to say, okay, well, this part of it, so I got to get under there and get the face. And I'm going to say it's going to go away from this face, and then I'm going to have an offset, right? That offsets in the right direction of the thickness of the O-ring. Okay, so that's looking pretty good. The last thing you'll notice is that this head is still going to be free to rotate about here. So if we want to fix that, what we can do is we can just take this face and say, hey, we're going to want to face that towards the front. Right, so it's going to be parallel. And we can try and flip those around. So that looks okay. Did a little odd flip there, but looks like it figured it all out. And there's our assembly. It's nice to leave the head clear, just so it's easy to see. And if you want to find the flashlight or find the light bulb, I had to make that myself. But you can come into here and you can find the bulb on master and then try and recreate it. And the AAA battery, you can either recreate or you can get it on something like GrabCAD. It's a place where you can download stuff. So last thing I want to show you is how to do the exploded view. So it's nice to see how things go together with this exploded view, and we can make it look like this and put it into a drawing eventually. So what we're going to do is in this assembly, can be some extra ones, and it'll say exploded view. So what you want to do is, this is kind of the order of operation which I would take apart. So I want this one and this one just to go together. So I click on both, and then you click on the way they want to move. And then that step is done. So that's one of the exploded steps. And then the next step is going to be this window. So now I select the window, and then I'm going to tell it which direction I want to go. I bring it up here, right? And then I click done. And then next, this set screw would have to come out, right? If I do that in the other order, what will happen is this would like pretend like it goes through the set screw. Done. Next, the head will come up. Right, and then I'll click done. And then last is the O-ring. And hit Done. And then if you want to change any of the steps, you can go back and select them and move them around. But this looks good to me. So cool, you can see how it goes together. If you want to go and under configurations, undo all of these little arrows that open the trees. And here you can say like animate collapse, and you can even make a video of this going all together. Right, so that we could even do a video of it coming apart. See how it goes together. Or if you wanted, you could just right click and hit collapse and put it back into the collapse state. Right. All right, so hopefully that helps you put together your flashlight and gets you moving towards your final project, doing the SolidWorks on your final project. Don't forget to save everything. Don't forget to keep all of your files together, because the assembly file references all of these part files. And so if you lose the part files, or let's say you email me or one of your teammates an assembly file without the part files, they won't be able to open it. And if you lose the part files, then your assembly file will be of no use to you. So make sure you keep them all together. The other nice part about that, though, is let's say you want to make some slight modification on one of these parts, you can just modify the part file, and then you'll see when you pull this file up that it'll automatically change it in here. So there's some drawbacks to them being linked, but there's actually more benefits as long as you can keep your files organized. All right, good luck.